Welcome back to Circus Z, a podcast on anything and everything that piques my curiosity. And today we have a author, a philosopher, and my teacher, Wimarshana. He has written 3 books on philosophy called A Critical Introspection, Post Politica, and A Citizen's Guide to the Third World. Hi, sir. How are you?
Good. Great to be here, Vipulesh. And, it's a great initiative that you have to, take philosophy forward. It's amazing. And it's a great pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And just a disclaimer to anyone listening, Wimarshana taught me in school, and he did ask me to call me by his name, but it's a force of habit, and it's very, very difficult to call teachers anything other than sir. Or
maybe that's something we can talk about, like forces of habit.
Of course.
Yeah.
So how this episode kind of came to be was mostly because of the impact that philosophy had on me. And in Sri Lanka, the education system doesn't necessarily cater or offer philosophy to students. And it was only in my last year of school that I was introduced to philosophy in an enrichment period, and Wimarshana was the teacher. And the lessons or the teachings of philosophy were so impactful that I kind of looked for answers myself, and that's how I found Stoicism. Learning about philosophy and the teachings of philosophy improved my thinking and my mental well-being to an extreme that I didn't think was possible, and it gave me a new perspective on life. And I thought that this was something very interesting that I could share with a lot of people and that a lot of people could relate to.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, just to sort of give you a primer to all of this, it's, before what I'm going to say today, it's amazing that, actually, to be honest, enrichment was the only subject, if you can call it a subject, that I ever enjoyed teaching. So, yeah, I mean, I just feel very heartened that it made the impact on you that I hoped. I think all education should make an impact on kids, but unfortunately it doesn't. Whereas this freewheeling education, which is the enrichment we did, has, and that's amazing. That's that really very heartening.
Of course, sir.
There you go again with the sir.
I'm trying really hard not to say so.
Right. So it tracks very closely with what I said in enrichment and in my own studies and adventures in philosophy. But basically, there's a paradox of modern life, and that is that we are so materially well off. And when I mean we, I must very carefully say the privileged, and I don't mean the whole masses of planet Earth, but if you're living in a developed country, and obviously this course initially was delivered before COVID, so if you're an American, upper middle class American, your material well-being is better than kings and queens 50 years ago, right? You've got your iPads and your air conditioning and Uber and yeah. So, but the paradox here is that despite of all these things, there's a depression epidemic and an anxiety epidemic, and they're comorbid, so they go hand in hand. Now, obviously, we are all focused on the physiological COVID epidemic right now, but before that, and COVID just makes it worse. So what's wrong? This is the question that, we must, philosophy is not about old men with long beards in ancient Greece. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's wrong? And to answer these questions, Vipulesh, there's so many, in human history, there are so many vendors. Yeah. And since this is philosophy, I can sort of speak freely, but for a long span of human history, yeah, how to solve these existential issues, the suffering here on planet Earth has been religion. Yeah. So, but the problem is that in the 20th century, religion was marginalized, yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
for very good reasons, I would say, as an atheist myself. But the question is now that left a huge vacuum. So if we are so much better off, the American today is way better off than their parents were material. Right? Convenience is ubiquitous, like everywhere. What can't we get at the click of a click of a button and the touch of a touch screen? Yeah. So, but the problem is, why are we so sad? So my philosophizing starts with that point, not the history of philosophy and Plato and all these things. Yeah. So what's up? Why are people so sad when they have so much? And so this is very particular and specific to people who have. This is not poor kids in Africa. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
what's wrong? So there have
Uh,
been so many. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
so what I realized with, well, our generation at least,
Mm-hmm.
is that
Yeah.
the whole concept of mental illness or depression and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
it's been romanticized in mass media with shows
Okay.
like 13 Reasons Why,
Mm-hmm.
with people speaking up against it,
Mm-hmm.
that it's almost turned into this
Mm-hmm.
sensational
Mm-hmm.
topic where
Mm-hmm.
everyone who feels sad just falls deeper and
Mm-hmm.
deeper into the
Mm-hmm.
trap, because
Yeah.
they've kind of been the extent shown like the bad end of the extent that
Mm-hmm.
it can go to. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel
Mm-hmm.
like that plays a huge psychological effect on kids these days, and they kind of start to feel like they're falling into the same trap, which just takes them down this a spiral that
Yeah.
eventually leads to that point. Because even when the pandemic hit and my life was the best it's ever been, and I was having the time of my life, and
Yeah.
everything just went away. Like half of my friends moved to uni.
Yeah.
I was locked up at home, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wasn't even able to have the experiences that I was like planning to have in
Yeah.
uni.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that kind of took me to a bad place. And of course, a lot of like personal stuff, things that every teenager goes through now. It
Yeah.
just takes you to a very, very negative end of the spectrum that you're not necessarily used to in
Yeah.
your early childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like teenagers nowadays, and at least me, I just straight away assume that, oh right, I may be depressed,
Yeah.
I may need help.
Yeah.
But I feel like there is a process, and what people forget is that there's so much you can do to stop yourself from
Mm-hmm.
slipping into
Mm-hmm.
this state,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just giving into it and looking for the bad end of the spectrum because of how
Yeah.
sensationalized this whole topic is.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree that mental illness, and there's, as with anything, and that's kind of like my, underlying thread here is that, you know, there's a philosophy of everything, including running, including like, the most seemingly trivial things. Michel Foucault was a very famous French philosopher, and he talked about how this madness, which depression used to be called, and, labeled as it's gone through so many evolutions. Yeah, like it's evolved from, but I understand what you mean. Like, obviously, it's almost, I love that word, you romanticize sadness. But on the other hand, the only, this is philosophy, so we can always agree, disagree, we can challenge. This is not religion. So all I can say is, yeah, you're right that there is a sort of a fetishism, like a focus and obsession with one's own mental health nowadays. But what I can say is, like, there is also some, what I always tell my friends is, sometimes it's not the fish that is ill, it's the water in the fish tank. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we are expected to function positively and be happy in an environment that, this is not an environment that facilitates that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you look at a lot of people who do office jobs, They're very sedentary. Yeah, now this is the moving away from philosophy. They're sitting at screens. Kids are under immense exam pressure, right? Like I'm a teacher, yeah, an unwilling one, but I'm a teacher, Vipulesh, and the kids are under so much of stress. And I'm sure maybe I didn't take school seriously, but when I was in school, obviously some kids were under stress. But this is a new, another level, yeah. Okay,
True.
so it's yeah, you're right in a sense that obviously, you know, there is a medical sort of, the psychologists and the psychiatrists have created these issues as well. But from a philosophical perspective, the modern world, is very, it has its own stressors which don't involve survival. Yeah, it's not about
Mm-hmm.
getting your daily meal. It's not the caveman problem. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's a different set of problems. Yeah, like if you take the best example which every kid can relate to is social media. Yeah, like those days we used to compare ourselves to 20, 30, 40 people. And when I mean those days, I always mean the sort of primitive sort of primordial cave man, cave woman setting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're seeing the highlights of everyone's life, and that's not their real life, because no one's posting a video of being stuck in traffic on Monday morning and getting, scolded by your boss. Yeah. So it's a new set of stressors, and I get it. It's, the lockdown was very difficult. So this is what my whole, sort of philosophy in terms of what I try to tell the kids is, taking Prozac, the medical solution, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and consumerism, the market solution, yeah. None of these things will, because they always want to change the fish. But sometimes this modern world, though it's much more comfortable and convenient, you probably are ordering something right now on Uber Eats, yeah. Yeah, but the problem is this environment is, sometimes it's the toxicity of the water that poisons the fish. Yeah, so but I do definitely take into account, there's a romanticization of emotions. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's a very good point that you brought up. So basically, in human history, as I was saying earlier, and Vipulesh will interlude with his wonderful questions, like what has happened is we have made so much of progress, and sometimes you're the victims of your own success. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So thousands of years, majority of people toiled in the fields, and life was very tough. Infant mortality was high. You know, um, it was miserable for the peasants. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But the only thing they had, and I've told you very explicitly, I'm an atheist, but this is where atheists don't like me, because, you know, I still have a not a soft spot, but I still understand the importance of religion. Thousands of years. And you know what the peasants were taught? Okay, you know what? Don't worry, you're gonna have eternal heaven in the next life. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But about in the enlightenment, yeah, that was a great flourishing of rationality. And the great philosopher, this is why I don't want to talk about their lives because it's a bit boring for kids, but all I can say is Friedrich Nietzsche. He had this wonderful saying, which I think everyone has heard: God is dead. But they don't know about the next sentences, and we have killed him. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
what has happened is now we got rid of religion. Yeah. And this happened in my own life as well. I was, anyway, not from a religious background or anything, but once you get rid of that, now you're left alone in this world, right? There is no next. Yeah. There's nothing next. Yeah. So
Yes.
then what happens is, now you've got to make meaning in this world. Yeah. Now
Mm-hmm.
science is what really upseated God and religion and the church and in different areas, whatever the institutions were, religious institutions were. But the problem is now science is explaining the natural world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is that going to leave us with? It's going to leave us with a huge void. Yeah. So now to fill that void, what we have is a type of, no, we have many things, but under the broad umbrella of consumerism. Yeah. If you buy this, you will feel better. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you wear this, people will like you. Yeah. And at the same time, there's a cult, there's a sort of a movement, probably starting from the 1960s, of happiness. You should be happy. Yeah. But this is a huge burden, and the relevant philosophy here, because look, I must give credit to these people, and unlike most of the people I quote today, he's alive, Pascal Bruckner, French philosopher. Yeah. It's called On the Duty to Be Happy. So that's a book that every, I would, recommend to everyone. Yeah. So now the problem is consumerism says buy that new iPhone. Yeah. Buy those new shoes, whatever. Yeah. And you'll be happy. And under consumerism, ironically, comes maybe absurdly, not ironically, comes pharmacology, right? If you're not happy, pop a pill. 1980, the year escapes me, Eli Lilly released Prozac. And a good chunk of the American population was on Prozac. And the scientists are still not sure how Prozac works. It changes your neurotransmitters, for sure. But how it's just, so pharmacology. Self-help is another one of those things. Yeah, today it's 7 steps to be happier. Tomorrow, now they want to sell another book, it's 9 steps to be happier. Yeah, you will sell edition 2, right? Because you know how authors work. Okay, as a very unsuccessful one, I can take shots at the successful ones. Yeah, the easy, sugary message sells. Okay, then but as only philosophy can tell you, because here's the thing with philosophy, it really, the great philosophers, though we shouldn't definitely idol worship, we shouldn't worship them, they really didn't care about whether their message, they're not the vendors. This is where I demarcate them from the vendors, distinguish from the vendors. Yeah, religion was the greatest vendor in human history. When religion took a backseat in the developed world, came consumerism. You buy this next thing, you buy this, whatever. Okay, and you'll be happy. But why? Okay, if that is the case, why is there a depression epidemic? Why is there an anxiety epidemic? Kids now, anxiety starts in the teens, the early teens now. Yeah, at least childhood. Remember, I think you alluded to childhood was a time where we were immune from that.
Yeah.
It was a joyous time. Now it starts early. You guys are worried about your exams, your marks, little kids come to me and talk to me about their futures and their universities and their, I'm like, seriously?
Yeah. So along those lines, and I'm going to kind of go back, Wimarshana, go back and kind of come back to the whole point of consumerism. I personally was born into a pretty religious family, but luckily they were liberal enough to kind of respect my views to not kind of follow religion if I wanted to. And even though in the initial stages religion made sense because that's all you've taught and you're not really shown the other side of the spectrum, as I got educated further and further, and I kind of discussed this in one of my classes at uni too. Religion, well, in the past used to play a role of telling people how to live life in a more respectable way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I felt like that made sense, and I felt like that was a very good purpose that religion served, to kind of tell someone, this is the noble, the ethical way to live, which not only makes life makes life easy for that person, but also makes life a little bit more pleasant for other people. But I also started to see that religion turned into a very political sort of scenario where it wasn't just the good messages that were spreading, but also, you know, messages that incite violence, that incite xenophobia, separatism, and that kind of escalated over my life. And the more I was able to understand the causes and the sources of these issues, is when I started to kind of feel like, okay, maybe the ideas of religion have been so warped over time that right now what we're given is very different to what it was initially intended to be. And that kind of brings this, you know, huge dilemma where I have to choose between following something I don't necessarily agree with at this current state of time and, you know, looking for answers myself. And this is when science came in, and this revealed another spectrum of religion where anything that science couldn't explain at the current period of time was kind of brushed off to religion to explain through God. And as science progresses, concepts of religion kind of came undone, where science provided evidence, proof, you know, of evolution, of the Big Bang. And suddenly the theories and the core institutions and principles of religion started to unravel and started to lose a bit of credibility for me. And this kind of led me into this whole bandwagon where you kind of abandon religion and you go towards the more scientific modern life where it's just like there's nothing after like your death, and I am going to make the most of what I do now and live my best life.
YOLO, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's very outdated, but yeah.
Oh, wow. Ouch. For me, YOLO is like me being cool, but yeah, I can get it going.
Yeah. So that I feel like that trend, you know, live recklessly, you only live once, like experience everything. Although it was a very good motto to go by, you know, living every day like it's your last. Because I could die tomorrow, but if I'm happy with how I've led my life till now, then I'm okay with going.
Yeah.
It kind of led me into consumerism, you know, where...
Okay, that's an interesting leap because I haven't really explored that leap. So the fact that you have one life led you to consumerism.
Yeah. So I feel like that's when I started to kind of look at all of these other things that were offered that isn't necessarily supported by religion, or, you know, that kind of leads you into things like the social media trends, you know, the hype of the internet that everyone wants to do right now. And I felt like once you go into that kind of spiral, then it's just you being marketed things claiming that they're going to make your life, that it's going to make your life better. So like post more on Instagram, you get more followers, apparently you make money out of it, and then you can travel and live your life. If you have posts that show that you have a large group of friends, then it must mean that you're like socially happy and that you're content with how your life is going. But it wasn't necessarily the case. And I feel like it's only through experience that you realize that what is put out there and what's, you know, kind of shown to the general public of your life and another person's life is never the truth. And you don't... don't necessarily understand the bad sides of their lives because it's always hidden. For example, you know, there was this really popular YouTuber called Liza Koshy. She was, you know, dominating everything. She was literally on every billboard interviewing presidents. And suddenly she just said, I am not doing well with my mental health, so I'm going to just stop. And she took a whole year's break. And that kind of puts this whole concept into light where you could look at someone and think that they have everything, their life's perfect, you know, they can buy whatever they want, they can post whatever they want. And that is what gives them fulfillment. But even those people who seemingly have everything aren't necessarily happy, but a simple guy who works a 9 to 5, has a family, and goes for a drink with friends at 6 o'clock in the night, is way happier than that person who has everything.
Actually, I have a poem based on that, but yeah, I get it. Like, I know what you're saying. Like the prepackaged commercial, off-the-shelf happiness is not what it as advertised. Yeah,
Exactly.
it doesn't live up to the hype. And there's just one thing before you continue, and I really like to hear your thoughts on this. But like, also if you go into philosophy, you realize, is happiness even the goal? Yeah. Because the ancient Greek philosophers thought that what they thought as happiness is so much more substantial and deep and profound than what we think as happiness. Because what we think of happiness is feeling good all the time. Yeah. Whereas what they thought of happiness was a meaningful life which helps others and which moves society forward. So happiness itself has changed as a concept. Like for us, happiness is just like, oh yeah, I feel good right now. I feel good all the time. Yeah. I've got a lot of money. I drive this car. But like, this is why Aristotle called it eudaimonia. And you can be happy after you're dead, which is kind of impossible now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So happiness is very chemical now, right? Dopamine firing in your brains, which is a stupid thing because dopamine cannot fire if you do the same thing over and over again. Yeah. There's its happiness was imbued. It was like drenched with meaning those days. Now happiness is just like, yeah, what can I buy next? What, who can I date next?
Very true.
So anyway, it was very interesting.
And
away from religion.
On the concept of happiness, and I was victim to this for a very long time too. I always, well, not just me, but I think the mass population views happiness as a destination rather than the journey. And I learned this very late, but I realized that happiness is just like any other emotion or sensation. It's like being hungry or sleepy. It comes and goes and is never permanent. So no matter what successes you have, no matter what materialistic property you own, the happiness that you get from it is only temporary, and
exactly.
The only way to kind of sustain it is find things and surround yourself with things that give you that temporary feeling of happiness, rather than work towards something that you consider will give you permanent happiness while being miserable like today.
This is like it's very heartening. You're a young boy and you've made so much strides in this kind of thinking. But yeah, if you tie yourself down to hits of happiness, like, oh, I feel good right now. Yeah. Well, that's and the psychologist's word is in, study after study, which is not philosophy, but psychology. As you habituate, right? Your Ferrari is not going to be that. It's not going to give you that dopamine hit 3 months down the line. Yeah.
True.
But this is where Pascal Bruck now, this is where philosophy is the real answer to a lot of, and has always been the answer, and the modern world is no different from this. When you're working towards something of meaning, this is the different definition of happiness, right? The struggles and the travails that you experience on the way, those are also meaningful. Yeah. When you're just trying to get, whether it's through chemical means or others, high. And one of the biggest misconceptions, Vipulesh, is that the only addictions are chemical addictions. Yeah.
True.
Now we have shopping addictions. We have so many different addictions, social media addictions, and no chemicals are entered into your body. They may be generated by your body, but they're not entered into your body. Yeah? So what happens here is, this is such an important thing for the modern person to understand, is that what is the impact you're going to make in this world? What are your dreams? Yeah. And the struggle towards your dreams is a contentment, and then we must distinguish contentment from happiness, right? Happiness is a very, as you said perfectly, right? You buy this thing, 20-30 minutes of happiness. Yeah. The question is to generate, in the absence, as Friedrich Nietzsche said, of God, is to generate meaning and purpose in this life. In an age where the educated, air quotes, whether they say it overtly or not, will not believe in a higher power, how to generate meaning. Yeah. And none of the standard solutions work, right? Self-help and consumerism. If they worked, we wouldn't be in this predicament, right? So great. This is very helpful for me. Continue. So what did you find when you gave up and you science debunked religion, basically, right? Am I right to sum it up like that?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So what did you find? Because I'm old, so I want to see what the young people found. Yeah. What did you find? An emptiness or whatever? You tell me. I have no clue.
Well, in my case at least, I felt like I had nothing to work up to, which lifted a lot of burden off of me. Because with religion, of course, it's live a meaningful life, do good, and then you get to heaven, or that's when God thinks you're a good person. And suddenly that was all lifted off of me, and I get to decide how to live my life. I get to choose my priorities, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, care for everyone, sharing is caring type of things. I mean, sure, these are good things, but those aren't goals anymore. And I felt like I was in control of my own life, and I got to choose the direction that I wanted to take it in, as opposed to living for some sort of end goal that some higher power that I don't even have any evidence of, deems right. And also on top of that, I kind of came to this realization that I have more proof right now, at the current state of time at least, that there is nothing after death. But if I spent my entire life believing that there's something after death, and I have this sense of regret the second I die, I've completely wasted my life. And I felt like I am okay with, being wrong in the future than being wrong in the present, to the point where I've just, given up on experiences, given up on things in life that I wanted to have.
In terms of the fear of death, one of the great philosophers, in my view, and I suppose in general, is Epicurus. And he had this very famous quote, in terms of the fear of death, which I'll just talk about, initially. Where I am, death is not. And where death is, I am not. So you shouldn't worry about death, because once you're dead, no one cares. But I know your question's a little adjacent to that. And the answer, I don't know, the philosophy is not about answers. It's about a better system of questions. And all I can say there is I know. When you realize there's nothing after this, you want to just max out here, right? Is that what you were trying to tell me? Yeah, you just want to max out here. But at the same time, maxing out here is kind of feeling, does it feel empty?
I guess once it's over, because I went all out last year of school, just did everything that I possibly could. And once everything was gone, it was almost like I had nothing more to look for in Sri Lanka, and I kind of looked to the US for the rest of my life.
Yeah. It's like the chasing the next high.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think if I were to, obviously, weigh in a philosophical sense, all I'd say is what happens there is, you should live to the, you should live this life to the maximum. But what happens is, if you define the maximum as just feeling good, that is actually an emptiness. Yeah. So, there's, the very famous philosophical thought experiment is the experience machine, right? What if you could hook yourself up to a machine where you feel you get everything you want? And the Matrix is based on this. I know the Matrix is a very old movie for you kids, but for us it was right? The Matrix is, basically you can just get whatever you want. Yeah, one day, I like basketball, and my life was dedicated to that. So, you're the NBA champion. Next thing, you're the Nobel Prize winner in literature. Everything goes your way. Would that be a good life? But here's the thing. If you think living your life to the fullest is just about highs, and I don't mean chemical highs, I don't mean drugs and alcohol, but I just mean having fun every day, in that's the wrong, not the wrong, but that's like sort of it's self-defeating in your, that's the problem with debunking religion. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you've got rid of the bigger meaning and you've got this very sugary meaning, right? I've got to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you can sort of find a more substantial a meaning which has these deep entangled roots in humanity and in life, that's a totally different thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think when people, I forget about abandoning religion. I don't think I ever had it. Yeah, though on some birth certificate it will say some label. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because my background is not at all religious. But like what I found was when I came to this intellectual point where I knew God doesn't exist. I knew, yeah, and air quotes again. What I found was, okay, now what can I do? There's a lot of pressure to maximize this life, but if that maximization is just me just having the best day over and over again,
Mm-hmm.
that's again an emptiness. So what we've got to do is generate sort of like a more substantial, meaningful, profound, deep kind of meaning there. Yeah. So it's wonderful to see kids at your age, thinking about these kind of things, because the alternative is to, as I always tell my kids on whatever in class, is to die at Shady Oaks, right? You get that two, you get upper middle class, you get those two driveways, you get, yeah, the weekends off, and yeah,
Yeah.
you earn a lot of money, you get your 401k, which is not even a thing in America now, but like, you're saving for retirement.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, it's actually opening many vistas in my understanding. So yeah, go on. So what's next now with all this understanding? What's next, Vipulesh?
Well, from the initial shock of go all out now and go find the new
Yeah.
thing wherever you go, and once that was taken away, I was stuck here and I
Mm.
was left to look for the next thing here. I kind of came across this theory called the compounding effect, where
Okay.
something you do today, something really small, seemingly
Mm-hmm.
insignificant, that someone may consider completely unnecessary, will
Mm.
compound and amount to something big over time.
Okay.
And that kind of gave me this whole, motivation to take things slow, to just do the little
Mm-hmm.
things on a day-to-day basis and forget about the
Mm-hmm.
bigger
Mm-hmm.
picture in the future. So that when I
Mm.
do reach that point in the future, a year, 2 years, 10 years from now, I I will look back and not see a burden of work or like the bad times,
Mm.
but I will see the little bits of happiness and the struggles and
Mm-hmm.
me basically persevering and overcoming things to
Mm-hmm.
reach to that point that may seem like a goal.
So, like to sum up, there's that. I know people might call it a cliche, but sometimes cliches are right. The small things are the big things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that tracks very well with what a lot of. I think I've got to go back to the legend Aristotle. I think that tracks a lot with what eudaimonia is, right? A meaningful life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where individualism is a reaction to the fact that people, peasants, and the great majority of people in the span of human history have been nameless, faceless servants for the powers that be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So whether it's kings, just basically kings. Yeah. Okay. So individualism is a reaction to that, but at the same time it leaves the individual very lonely, right? Like trying to just be happy all the time. So I think what's good about what you said was like the compounding effect. Like if you can make a difference here, that's also a human impulse. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just feeling good all the time. So you know what I tell my econ students is, look, There are people cleaning these roads. They are searing in the hot sun. They are getting soaked in the cold rain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Now, where's your empathy for them? Yeah. And they think of it as a service, as a duty. But for me, it will benefit them if they integrate into the, multifaceted, entangled social network,
Mm-hmm.
right? If they befriend one of those people, that will be to their gain. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think a life, even now, Epicurus, one of the great, as I mentioned him before, yeah, but he's misunderstood. Epicurus was a great Greek philosopher, and what he said is so misunderstood. He said you should pursue a life of pleasure, but what we define as pleasure is wrong. Yeah. What is pleasure today? Eating what you like, drinking what you like, and I do all those things, but consuming, yeah, making yourself happy. But his definition of pleasure, very importantly, was the absence of pain, ataraxia and aponia, but also, a life of meaning. And that is very difficult in a hyper individualistic world where it's all about me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, I can understand how it's difficult for kids. Yeah. Because, you're always taught you should go to the best unis, you should defeat your classmates.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then when that all breaks down, you're like, what am I? What should I do with this life? Yeah. There's nothing after this.
Yeah. Along those lines, this
Yeah.
whole, I mean, I'm not necessarily sure about how far this goes in the Western world, but at least in the Eastern side of the world, it's always,
Mm-hmm.
get high marks, go to the best unis, outperform everyone.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
for a very long time, I did kind of, go, all right, I need to do this so that I can, climb the ladder, win the race. And once I left school, even though I felt like, I kind of had reached a point where, I was kind of ahead in the race after school.
Mm-hmm.
It was when I came to uni that I realized that none of it mattered and I'm right back to square one. And this kind of gave me this realization, and a lot of people did after they went to uni, and I've spoken to them about this, is that we worked so hard, put so much pressure on ourselves, and basically ran the race that everyone expected us to run.
Yeah.
To
A hamster on a wheel. Yeah.
to basically end up at the same point that everyone ends up in at some point in their life. So instead of running this race constantly and never looking back, I kind of remind myself that, sometimes it's okay to just stop and just look around, just take it all in.
Smell the roses, yeah.
And I don't know, I feel like
Oh, wow.
these small realizations that you have throughout life, when you go from a very premature mindset to a more mature kind of mental development, these realizations kind of take your quality of life to a better position. And it's only when people stop looking for these realizations and these reasons I feel that they plateau and kind of maybe go into, the more dark extremes, or even just remain in a constant state of, unhappiness.
I've got so much of stuff to add to this, but it's amazing that you said this. But all I can say is, yeah, I mean, if you look at school as defined by a very competitive school that I teach in, what happens is you spend 12 years and it's a type of reductionism. The kid who made new friends, learned new things, but got B's and C's is a failure. The kid who just studied 6-7 hours a day, if that's even a thing, but it probably is, yeah, and just got 5 A stars or 4 A stars is a success. Yeah. So what we're doing is we're taking 12 years of the best years of a human being's life. Yeah, the most open-minded, and we are reducing it to 4 letters,
Pretty much.
or 5 letters with a little notch on the end. Yeah. Okay. What has education become? Because a lot of people now, this is not philosophy, this is history. education was a very different thing. Education used to be, and maybe this part is wrong and people won't agree with me, but education would was for the aristocrats and the well-to-do to open their minds. Yeah, that's how education started. Now education is a mass-produced commodity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what has happened is education is just to make you not to open your mind and to have a better, broader, richer, more meaningful life. Education is to make you a better worker, right? This is why when you're on your fourth year of university, Vipulesh, Google and I don't know what your major is, so I'm just gonna go with the companies I know. Yeah, Google and Apple and so on are gonna be like, oh, when you finish, join a, you got a job offer. Yeah, education is work attraction. Yeah, so obviously, 12 years of the most important years of your life. Yeah, and you're just training to be a better hamster on the wheel.
Very true.
Yeah, education. There's a very famous quote, though the person who said it escapes me. The point of education is to replace an empty mind with an open mind, and that is not what education does, right? It replaces an empty mind with a full mind of various theories and stats and exams. So this is the dilemma, this is the paradox, and this is the irony of modern life, right? More people go into education. Universities were for the intellectuals those days. Very slim minority went to them, and it was about philosophers philosophizing in ancient Greece in the squares, the town squares, and all. Now, what it has become is mass produced. At the same time, it's a trading program. Right? You just and this is why the important certain courses have become marginalized. Right? Good luck doing sociology. If you do sociology, okay, you can become a sociologist in a university. So it's a very, and this is the ironic pity that I have for you kids. Yeah, you guys are so privileged. You have so much. But at the same time, I pity you. Yeah. So that's with all these privileges, with all these advantages, these, head starts on life, in the end, what is the point? If you hate yourself and you hate your situation, which inevitably turns to hating life and others. Yeah, very troublesome. Yeah, it's vexatious. Yeah,
true, sir. And it's only when you talk to people or listen to people talk about things like this is when you realize that there's a lot of changes you can do to your life, and that it's primal things that we all understand at a very grassroots level, but we never actually take the time to dive deeper into it and kind of explore the idea further, which, well, after I kind of did, elevated, my way of thinking so much to the point where I feel like my mental health, my quality of life, and basically just my approach to life drastically improved.
So, to clarify, you think that thinking about a good life made your life better?
No, sir. I think that thinking about what gives me meaning and what gives an act I do meaning, or a certain scenario meaning, kind of made me understand a particular situation in a broader way, which took me closer to a better resolution to a situation as opposed to a more negative one.
That's what if you translate the words, philo means love, soft knowledge. So this is what it is, right? It's a pursuit of knowledge to make a better life. Where you by thinking about these issues, you have outed and you have exposed and you have dissected many of the issues that many teenagers and adults face. So this is where Socrates is very relevant. The unexamined life is not worth living. When you are drawn to examination of your life, at first it's painful, but in the end it will lead to a broader, better, richer life. Now what's next? What are the trending? Okay, now COVID. Okay, and trust me, this is not aphilosophical, because philosophy has a set of questions for everything. Now COVID has delayed your university life, and various others can't come to school, and the kids, people, they were like, oh, it's good. I don't want to, I can't come to school. I don't have to wake up at like 5:30 and everything. And then 3 months down the line, they're like, oh, I miss school. Yeah. I'm never going to see my friends again.
Yeah, for sure.
So now what's the, now, this is why Stoicism is a great philosophical, school. And what it says is actions, basically, though they don't say it literally, actions speak louder than words. Now, what are you going to take forward? What changes are you going to make in your life now that you've been exposed to this and now that you're curious about all this?
Well, what I'm going to take forward is that even though some things, like school classes, they may seem tedious, they may be, something that you want to escape as soon as possible. Once something like that is gone, you have a far greater appreciation for it. And I usually laugh at adults when they say, oh, I'd do anything to go back to, my childhood. But I honestly feel that I will do anything to go back to like year 6 and do it all over again if I could.
All right.
So what I kind of take away from this is, to take it all in as I go. And even if it's good, even if it's bad, even if this seems like the worst possible position in life that you can be in, you're going to look back at this in the future and want to be in it again. And I feel like not having that regret is, the biggest gift I can give myself in the future.
Wow. Okay.
And yeah.
So you've touched upon so many things, but
well, that's pretty much it.
Okay. So this is, again, I have to go back to one of my favorite, I'd say top 5, but then I pretty much rank everyone under that at various circumstances. This is what Friedrich Nietzsche said, right? It's used in rap songs now, but that which doesn't kill you can only make you stronger. That's by a philosopher, believe it or not, right? Friedrich Nietzsche. So what you're saying is it's those experiences, and everybody, studies say that even though they hated school while they were in it, they long, they yearn for that. Yeah. So, the next step, Vipulesh, is to say what is so special about that makes people long for it. Yeah. And that also casts light on something else. If you hated it while it was going on and you long for it after, maybe instantaneous pleasure is not the end all and be all of human striving, right? You hated waking up early in the morning, wearing a uniform, and listening to dinosaurs drone on about whatever, yeah? Then I'm one of the dinosaurs, I'm sure. But like, what's up there, yeah? Yeah, because everyone that I've ever spoken to in my life says, oh, I hated school when I was there. But, those were the best days of my life. To quote Brian Adams. Okay. Right? And very rarely quoted, but yeah. So what's up there? So these are the, philosophy is not about answers. That's religion. That's even consumerism. Yeah. You buy this, you'll feel happy. Philosophy is about refining your questioning technique. If you can ask the better questions, philosophy says you can have a better life. Yeah. So it's fundamentally different from what else is sold.
Sure.
Because they are final, those are, solutions right there. Yeah. Buy this, you'll feel happy. But the thing is, it's a donut, it's a cupcake, it's a Big Mac. Yeah. You feel you're good while you're eating it, while you're consuming it, and then you have a down.
Again, this might stray a bit off topic, but so the reason why I kind of liked philosophy so much when I initially was exposed to it in school was because whenever I did anything else, and everything in my life to that point was pretty much this pattern. There is a question and there was always an answer. There was, what's game theory, and there's a paragraph you need to write, or what's
You had to take a shortcut into answering these, yeah? Okay.
There was like, what's 2 times 2, and it's
Yeah.
4. What philosophy kind of did was it answered my questions with more questions.
It's a very nice way of
And
putting it.
I
Yeah.
felt that in the study of philosophy, at least, there is no wrong answer, but just different answers. And right now, I could be saying something that you may not completely agree with, or you could be saying something that I don't agree with, but none of it is
Totally.
wrong, and everything is accepted as long as, there's some sort of substance to it.
Exactly. So philosophy is a process. You get it? It's not an end product. It's the process of questioning, asking, diving deeper, dissecting. Yeah. So the thing is, the only criticism of philosophy that I could offer is this, and philosophers don't like this. This is why John Stuart Mill said, Socrates unsatisfied is better than a pig satisfied. But this is why this is my dilemma. This is my angst in philosophy, Vipulesh. Now, once we go with these questions to people, we are not increasing their subjective happiness. Yeah, you get it. They are not happy sheep or pigs, as John Stuart Mill said. So, what we are doing is we're enriching the intellectual life, but they are not sated, they are not content, they are not as happy in their bubbles as they were. So this is the problem, right? This goes back to, now remember we did Plato's cave, yeah? Somebody escapes from the cave, sees the real sunlight and the green of the grass and the gold of the sun and the blue of the rivers, yeah? And comes back and is vilified. Now, Plato stops there saying, what a tragedy that this person is at worst killed and at best ostracized. But here's the thing. This is one thing which again comes back to philosophy. Is it better to keep people satisfied with their racism, with their materialism, with their various proclivities and prejudices? Though I am into philosophy and that's my life, I would say philosophy is not going to make you happier in the instant, in the moment, but it's it's a set of questions. Yeah. So the kid who never thought about this in your class, in your batch, yeah, is probably happier. But then philosophy can make its comeback by saying, is happiness the ultimate goal? So yeah, it's very interesting in that sense.
And Wimarshana, you touched on Plato's cave, right? And that was a topic that, kind of really stuck with me, and I had a few discussions with friends. But before I tell you how that conversation went, why don't you kind of explain what the allegory of the cave is? And I'll give you the counter I got for this, which was wow. And then you can kind of give me the answer for it.
So there's a cave, okay, and there's a fire, okay, and people are tied behind the fire, and obviously the fire shadows are projected onto the cave wall. Yeah. So I don't think my visual.
Yeah, if anyone
best, but,
listening wants to just Google Plato's
Google
cave.
it. Yeah. Okay. Google it. Yeah. So there's a fire. There's people, and behind the fire there's a wall, and behind the people who are chained to the wall are puppeteers. Okay, and they are casting shadows, because obviously if a source of light is between a wall and a set of actors, then there are shadows cast, and these shadows entrance the people. These shadows are the people's lives. Yeah, shackles aside, these shadows are the people's lives. Anyway, at various times, various people who are shackled, unshackle themselves. Doesn't matter how, doesn't matter why. And then they cross the fire, they come out of the cave. Many who try fail, and then they just say, this is ridiculous, and then they go back and get shackled again. But one person, which is actually not one person, but a metaphor here again, gets out of the cave and sees the real sunlight. Now, sunlight is brighter than any fire, and real grass and real water and real animals, and reality is richer than any kind of fiction perpetrated by anyone. And this person sees the sunlight of truth. They are immersed in this. They are so engrossed in this. And when they get this impulse, to see, okay, say, look, oh, my brethren, my family, my friends, my community, they are shackled and they climb, okay, very bravely. They climb down back into the cave. They go back into the cave and say, you guys are living in an illusion. And as I said earlier, I think the best case, or the worst case scenario is this person is considered, a heretic and killed. The best case scenario is they're considered mad. Yeah. And the allegory of the cave indicates and symbolizes and expresses the predicament of the philosopher. Yeah. The philosopher has seen further and deeper than the average person. But the predicament of the philosopher, Vipulesh, is that they can't convey this to the people they wish to convey this, their brethren, whatever it is, their friends, their relatives. Yeah. So it's a very powerful allegory, a very powerful metaphor to what is happening and what will always happen in human existence.
Now we come to my dilemma. So I was basically this philosopher who, thought escaped.
Very good. Yeah.
Saw the true meaning behind life. Came back to get the people who were just staring at shadows of, say, religion, consumerism. And the story got flipped on me, where a very religious person goes, well, I could say the same, that you're kind of staring at the shadows of, philosophy and atheism, whereas someone who truly believes in God kind of escapes these shackles and sees the true meaning of, life in religion and devotion, and escaping the cave is pretty much like, heaven or eternal life. And that person coming back and trying to convince these kind of developed minds wouldn't necessarily work. And I didn't know how to answer this, because it kind of made sense, yeah.
It does make a lot of sense, because this is also the power of philosophy. I know I'm like a propagandist, and they should if philosophy were a consumer brand, I would. But here's the thing. Friedrich Nietzsche said Plato is a bore, right? So here's what happens when you do that. Yeah, is you're not on sound epistemological ground. You're not, the other person can come back with those arguments, yeah, and you've got to live with that. Yeah. What if you are the one who's chained and they are the one who has seen reality? And this is when, very reluctantly, Vipulesh, we've got to entertain science. Philosophers don't really, they have a very skeptical, not very skeptical, but varying. They are not, science is the one that will prove the person who went out of the cave and came back. And we'll say, okay, here, your interlocutor, whoever came back and said this, they don't have the weight of science on their side, right? And if they abandon science, they've got to abandon electricity, they've got to abandon cars, they've got to abandon the internet. Yeah, and that's what you have on you.
Right.
It is not in the philosophical domain, science necessarily. Well, obviously, there are overlaps, and philosophy helps science in many ways, but that is when they can't prove their case. If this were a court of law and evidence, facts were the arbiter, they can't prove their case. Yeah, you can. That's the difference. Yeah, so that is the only comeback. But philosophy has to sort of get a loaner, get some sort of help from science.
And if anyone listening wants to know what we're talking about, just Google Plato's Cave or the allegory of the cave, and you'll get a very detailed description of what it is.
So I hope you can invite me on another episode, and you know. And I hope in that episode you'll use my name as opposed to my
I
title.
tried. I really tried. It's
You tried.
yeah.
It's tough. Yeah.
That's pretty much all we have time for today. If any one of y'all have any more questions, feel free to contact Wimarshana. He's open to discussions. Of course, check his books out. They have more answers than this podcast can offer. Any concluding thoughts? Any final sentiments you want to leave them with, sir? Oh, Wimarshana.
Still working on that. Like philosophy itself, a work in progress. Yeah. Okay. So basically, what I can tell you is this: you are born in a time, to a family, in a country, perhaps to a race, and to a gender.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You will inevitably be asked to define yourself by that. But philosophy is east to west and spanning humanity, is the search not only for the truth, that's one part of philosophy, but a broader, richer life. And I'm stealing this from a philosopher himself and a historian, Theodor Zeldin. Humans are the heretics of nature. We are not bound by our nature. So if you want to live a good life, and again, I'm taking a quote from Socrates, the unexamined life is not worth living. And you have to think. You don't have to believe anything me or Vipulesh says or Vipuleshan, correct grammar. Okay. What you have to do is philosophy is a provocation to think, teases you into thinking, and that will lead you to a better life, a richer, broader life. Yeah. And that is how I would like to end.
All right.
Idea.
Okay, that was probably the best conclusion to an episode that I'm going to get. So let's just end it there. Till next week.
All right. Okay. It's a great pleasure. And my time at the high school I taught was a great, it was all worth it for this.
Of course, sir. And honestly, it was a pleasure talking to you too. The discussions were honestly thought-provoking and feel like it's going to change a lot more people's perspectives.
It's just me voicing the great minds of history.